It's a famous place of resort at all times, but especially on Sunday for those who love excitement and beer. There is no Sabbath in Over the Rhine. Nearly all the business houses are kept open 7 days a week, and many saloons all night. This is an excerpt from Moses King's 1880 print size and pint size King's Pocketbook of Cincinnati. It's a tour book written by Moses King, and it was famously distributed around the United States because Over the Rhine was that much of a party town in the 1880s. Tonight, we reveal the history of 1313 Vine Street, one of the most prolific nightlife spots in Cincinnati and has been for over 170 years. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities presents the Hometown Haunts podcast. I am your host, Kat Cloco, and tonight with me are Jen Kohler and Christina Wald. You can join us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Sin Cabinet Curio and on Instagram at Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities. And also, please join our Facebook group, Hometown Haunts. We're dying to hear about your personal encounters with the paranormal and fringe history from your neck of the woods. So please send your stories to hometownnauntedmail@gmail.com or join the Hometown Haunts Facebook group to share your stories. And we're an official podcast that can be heard wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to see us while we're doing the show, you can watch the video feed on YouTube. Find us by searching Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities and please rate and review us so other spooky history lovers just like yourself can find us. Link in the show notes, of course. And thank you, Jen, for putting us on all the different podcast networks. So, Christina, you bring to us today a note from one of our listeners. Would you mind reading it for everyone?
Sure, I'll read it. It says, "Hi, I recently found your podcast and I'm liking it so far. Really enjoyed the U.S. Air Force Museum episode. We're going to visit it in the next few weeks. I
Ooh.
moved from Sharonville to Claremont County about 12 years ago. I've looked up some of the lore and legends of the area, and one keeps coming up that I can't find any info on. It's the Hidden Valley Cult. I tried to Google search it to find more info, but it's never more than a blurb. Have you heard of this? I haven't gone through all your episodes yet, so apologize if you've covered this. Thanks for the show. I'm really enjoying it. Eric."
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for writing into us. And we have not talked about cults here yet. And wow, the Midwest is full of interesting cults and has been for over 100 years. And I've talked about a few in the various books that I've written, that most of them were niche religious cults that are long since gone now. But the Hidden Valley cult is not one that I've run into, but I do know on the east side, out in the farmlands, there are lots of porters to hell, portals to hell, and satanic churches, which were old meeting houses and locations for different cults that we haven't talked about yet. So this just tells me that there are listeners out there that want to learn about our cultish history around Cincinnati and Southern Ohio, Northern Kentucky.
It's interesting because my students around Halloween, one of them was like, "I heard that there's a portal to hell in Blue Ash," and I was like, "Oh, really?"
Please tell me
Do
about
tell.
it.
I
What have
did,
you
I did,
heard?
because it's interesting to hear, from them what stories they've heard.
Oh yeah. So and stories are always evolving. And
Yes.
I do want to note, I do. Wow, English today. There are actual cults in Cincinnati. I'm not going to name them right now, but they there are active ones around the city. So, yeah,
Ooh,
we
wow.
probably won't cover them. We'll cover the old dead ones.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
We don't want any retribution.
I, we don't need our lines cut. I like
No.
driving my car. I don't need those brake lines cut or anything. I like my internet. It's Anyway, I
Well, it probably do you think because of the internet, there's more than ever, like because you can find your people
Oh,
anywhere in the world to
people
start your
are
own cult.
people are strange, and it doesn't matter what decade, it doesn't matter what
No,
century. People are strange, and the Doors had it right.
exactly.
And there have been cults for groups throughout as long as people have been able to join social groups,
Mhm.
cults are a thing.
Mhm.
So, it's
And it's
and some
because
of them
everybody. Oh, go on.
oh,
Sorry.
no, some of them are kind of innocuous, like, they're just really a social group,
Mhm.
but and then they earn bad reputations, and then some of them are not great at all and are trying to separate you from your family and your money, so it's
Mhm.
and they've oh, like, the history of cults, there's always been those different variations. So, what were you gonna say, Christina?
Oh, I was gonna say that is it because whenever you have a group, there's always somebody that like doesn't agree with everything, and so then they start their own little group that, believes this specific thing. Like it seems like that is perhaps part of the historical thing. Everybody
Yeah,
wants to adapt their thing to them,
yeah,
to their own belief system.
yeah, it pretty much.
And then
Exactly.
they get power hungry and think they need to sleep with all the women, no matter what age.
That does happen too.
And then
Um,
somebody ends up dead or multiple.
yeah,
It's like a
it's
choose your own adventure.
Pretty
mm, yeah, I was thinking of
definitely one.
I was thinking of historic ones where people like, "Oh, then there's a famine," and you just start eating each other, and
Hmm.
so then you say, "Choose your own adventure." I'm like,
But maybe Mad Libs is better.
yeah,
Like insert noun here, insert.
oh, and I'm sure there are cultish Mad Libs already in existence somewhere on the internet. Oh my goodness.
On that note.
Yeah. Oh man. And it does kind of tie into, ironically, the research for tonight's episode, which is 1313 Vine Street. And I say that because of the social clubs that get mentioned in it. So, sources for tonight's episode is Digging Cincinnati History, which, my goodness, you all do wonderful research. The Cincinnati Post, Soapbox Cincinnati, WLWT, City Beat, the University of Cincinnati Grad Currents Archive, and yeah, that's it. So, uh, lots of different, various points of view. So, sit back and listen as Kat talks about Cincinnati over the Rhine history. So, we are going to enter our Wayback Machine to the 1850s. And Cincinnati saw a lot of growth. We have talked about this before. There was the era of Porkopolis and the riverboat industry booming at the time. Peter Knoll first purchased the property in 1850, where 1313 Vine Street is now located, uh, where he established Cincinnati Brewery. Five years later, the impressive building that stands now at was labeled 469 Vine Street, and it was, as it was known then, and it was 27,000 square feet that spanned the full block length from Vine Street to Republic Street. The building was designed to be a beer and dance hall and a meeting place, and has served this purpose for over 170 years. The first floor was designed as a saloon, with the second floor as a dance floor and the third floor and fourth floors as meeting halls. The first sub basement has alcoves around it and was once used for a bowling alley. Descending into the second sub basement reveals a 4,400 square foot, two chambered vaulted um, basement that runs the full length of the building. It's 20 foot has 20-foot barrel vaulted stone ceilings that are arched that go overhead. Currently, Ghost Baby, a popular subterranean bar in OTR, resides in these vaults. In 1859, Jacob F. Fatich established a coffee house, and I say this with air quotes around it, in the building. The term coffee house may be a little misleading since they offered just about anything to drink at all times of day. Mainly, they were meant as gathering spots. A similar such location that is still in business today is Highland Coffee House on Highland Avenue, where you can buy coffee there at any time of day, but also alcoholic beverages are also available and light food. The coffee houses, pubs, and saloons running out of the building changed hands for the next few decades. What's remarkable, and Digging Cincinnati did a wonderful job with this, is they have every single person who managed the building and what saloon was in it basically since 1855. There are a few decades where that information is missing, and what's remarkable is that information is missing from the mid 1900s. So from about 1950 to 1990, we don't have so many of these records, which is strange because we got all the old ones though. So, on the upper floors, there were a variety of social clubs, which goes back to the cults we were just talking about, that gathered there, such as the A.O. Goodfellows, the Washington Lodge Number 1, met there every Thursday evening at 469 Vine Street. The Humana Lodge Number 8 met every Friday evening. Seven Wise Men, the Cincinnatus Conclave Number 1, met every Wednesday evening at 469 Vine Street. The Ruckert Conclave Number 2 met every Sunday. And the Germana Encampment Number 1 met every first and third Wednesday in each month. And we have decades worth of these roles that you can look through to see how many different social groups use the facilities in this building. The only thing I don't see are the Masons, which would have had their own private building that is downtown, where they would be meeting for their Blue Lodges and for Scottish Rite. So I love going to old Goodfellows halls. They have such a spooky mysticism around. I've gone to different investigations at 2 different locations in Indiana, and the people that were giving us the tours are like, "We found human skulls here." And even a few years ago, human skulls were found in an old Oddfellows treasure trove. And yes, they use skulls in their rites. So that's what makes it so spooky and what adds to the spookiness of 1313 Vine Street. In 1877, Frank Rotter uh, became the manager of the building and renamed it the Tivoli, or Tivoli. There we go. There's no R in there. Tivoli. One of the names this building has been known as through the years, even with different building managers being brought on and leaving through the decades, Tivoli stuck. Social groups continue to use the buildings, such as the Cincinnati Linderkrantz, which met every Tuesday, the Cincinnati Sangerbund Drund oh my goodness, I am butchering this. I'm so sorry, everyone. Sengerkor Germana Manorkor Goodfellow Sengerkor and Knights of the St. Martin, Knights of St. Thomas, the Mutual Aid Society, Plattdeutsch Wolderschinden. I'm just going to stop. We had a lot of German culture groups, that social clubs that would meet there. Still the AO Goodfellows, the Humana Lodge Number 8, and then the AO UW Herman Lodge Number 15. The seven Wise Men Cincinnatus Conclave still met there. The Independent Order of Foresters Court Cincinnati Number 3, and the Knights of Honor Herman Lodge Number 92. These are all different groups that met there. And I love how basically this place was just a buzz with social groups. And you can imagine all these people, I'm going to be honest, they were mostly men, were meeting at this building and then going to the saloon that's on the first floor and in the lobby areas and drinking together. Doing research on this, I discovered that it was not uncommon for people to have more than one social group or social club they were meeting with. So a lot of these men will probably in groups together, they're probably in 2 or 3 other social clubs that meet at this building. And it's OTR, thus all the German names. And I am sorry, my German speaking friends, I cannot read German very well. So I butchered those. So moving on. In 1884, the building was renamed the Central Union Hall, and now you can understand why, on city maps. Then to the Germana Hall in 1887, and in the 1890s, it was marked as a dance hall for balls and parties as the new Lincoln Hall. In 1895, it was retitled as a saloon before becoming the Cosmopolitan. On June 12, 1897, when Wendell Meyer took over the management of the building, he had the entire building remodeled and added 6 bowling alleys to the first sub-basement. His new bowling alleys are described in the Cincinnati Enquirer as the finest in the city, and I provided the little snippet from the Cincinnati Enquirer. They had a formal reopening in that June 12th. Besides Tivoli, Cosmopolitan was the name the building was historically known as, and still kind of is known as today. Around Also around this time, the address changed from 469 to 1313 Vine Street. Mary Mary Harris Mother Jones made a speaking stop at the Cosmopolitan Hall in October of 1902. This was not her only speaking event or visit to the city, but in this case she was trumpeting the case of improving the work conditions for the miners in Pennsylvania, and this was a fundraising speaking engagement. Although the event was free, including the musicians who had donated their talents to entertain the masses while there, donations were encouraged to help the miners. This was, after all, the age when work unions did not exist, but because of work from people like Mother Jones, unions were able to be established. In 1910, Meyer, the manager of the Cosmopolitan, passed away. Not in the building. Frank Dunterhofer became the manager of the building and continued to do so through the 1920s. When Prohibition hit the nation, the Cosmopolitan fared through it as a dance hall with a speakeasy running out of it. That was very well known. In the late 1920s, Joseph Rosenberger became the manager of the Cosmopolitan. He added the Coral Gables indoor golf course to the Cosmopolitan, which continued to be a popular meeting spot for local social groups. The building remained Cosmopolitan Hall until the mid 1940s when the building became Bellenby Furniture Store, run by Ray E. Bellenby, or Bellenby. He was the one who is responsible for the marble Bellenby or Bellenby entrance placard that is at the front of the building. For the next few decades, the building would see a lot of change from the transition from being a place of social gatherings to retail stores. First was Bellenby Furniture Store, followed by the Welsbach Sales Company or the Welsbach Lighting, dealers in electrical equipment and supplies in 1956. It also housed insurance offices, pool rooms, a wallpaper store, and in this era, 1313 Vine's history is vague and not much has been preserved of it. Probably because no one thinks to preserve those ads for a wallpaper store on Vine Street. Stuff like that. In 1990, the second floor dance hall was used to film scenes from the movie A Rage in Harlem. Then in 1992, the most infamous tenants of 1313 Vine Street moved in, the Warehouse nightclub. Christina, did you go to the Warehouse nightclub?
I was not cool enough to go to the Warehouse nightclub.
It
It
was
was
a
kind of
really
an
cool place.
alternative yeah, it was kind of an alternative club, and I don't think I ever went there. I had friends that went there, but, I was too nerdy.
Okay. I pulled up some of the I can't I don't know how to share my screen for now, but I pulled up a lot of the like free drink tickets or free admittance tickets and the designs and the people that would show up and do performances at the club. And it was largely, from what I understand, definitely on the first floor because it was painted what gets referred to as um, basically saloon black or pub black, nightclub black. Like everything in the
Yeah, it
building
was
was
supposed
black.
everything was supposed to be black, and I don't think I ever went there. I don't
Yeah.
remember going there, but I heard many tales.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't I guess, what would you say? It wasn't my style, really. I was never that sort of goth
Y-
alternative type person.
Yeah. It wasn't your jam, and that is fine.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So, the Warehouse nightclub was, from all descriptions, an alternative nightclub alive with the Cincinnati alternative music
It
scene.
was quite popular, yes.
Yeah. 1990s goth, grunge flourished here, as well as the underground LGBTQ community. It was a place for anyone who loved black leather, chains, pumped up hair, and dark makeup. Flannel, jeans, and punk hair were also commonplace with the denizens of the Warehouse, a place I probably would have visited if it had been around when I was doing clubs. From a commentator about being a regular at the Warehouse, and this is from there is a Warehouse group page that is just in honor of the Warehouse. You could be whoever you wanted to be at the Warehouse. No one cared about how you looked or dressed. It didn't matter if you turned 18 or in your 50s. We were all there to dance, meet interesting people, just be ourselves, and have fun. That was the best part of the Warehouse. It is a very loved and still talked about today and greatly missed location in Cincinnati. There is a gaping hole where our little gothy hearts laid. Although a lot of Cincinnatians have said it was a scary place, and I definitely heard that when I moved here, it is still considered Cincinnati's best nightclub ever, which that's a strong statement. The 2001 race riots in Cincinnati, however, made their mark on the city, and the population hesitated from going downtown to OTR afterwards. The Warehouse nightclub stayed in business until 2004. After that, the building was closed and stayed abandoned for over a decade, even with 3CDC purchasing it in 2006. Um, they kept the black paint and everything. 3CDC never touched anything. When the renovations took place, there were still black lights in the in all the sorry, I'm laughing, in all the light sockets. Which I'm like, wow, okay. That must have made a very interesting first walkthrough when if you're an architect. Uh Chances are, if you took an American Legacy Ghost Walk in the 2010s, you either walked by or got a chance to go into 1313 Vine Street, because that was one of the stops. Tivoli, Cosmopolitan, the Warehouse all live on, and in late 2015, the buildings located at 1311, 1313, and 1315 were remodeled by 3CDC, and Union Hall was created. Today, Ghost Baby Nightclub calls the sub-basements home, while the startup Centrifuge and the Union Hall, a co-working space, and the new Kruger's Tavern, which opens Tuesday, December 13th. So as of as of this recording, yesterday, opened, now reside all at 1313 Vine Street. So there's a lot going on, and I love how it is still being used as a social venue so many years after it was established, and it's had remodels, but the heart of 1313 Vine Street has not been touched. Now, we do have a few ghost stories. We don't have a lot. For a building that has been around for over 170 years, we only got maybe one ghost story. So, in 1996, two men were killed in front of and near the Warehouse nightclub. The first was Charles Claiborne, who was 20 at the time, who was beaten to death by his brother. The second was Francis Epsey, 29, who was shot dead on the sidewalk in front of the nightclub. Their ghosts have never been reported, and you can get an idea that death lingers around the building. The place with the most reported spooky feelings is the Union Hall's sub-basement. Within its labyrinth, visitors begin to feel uncomfortable. Strange sounds have been reported there, and the feeling of being watched has been reported. Staff at the warehouse reported feeling uneasy, especially on the second and third floors where the offices were, but there was no discernible reason why. Ghost hunters who have used equipment there have had lights turn on and off, like flashlights turn on and off, during EVP sessions. One story is told by Ghost Baby on their website and is perhaps the origin of the bar's name. In an effort to revitalize the underground area, they write, workmen were sent in to set up the lighting fixtures. The only way to enter into the tunnels was to descend via a long ladder. After installation of the first bare bulb, the contractor made his way back up the ladder to retrieve a second bulb. When he returned, he found that the first bulb shattered. The attached wire was swinging as if it had been hit by someone or something. He shone his flashlight into the dark tunnel, but saw nothing. Since that day, other people in the space have reported hearing strange noises from time to time. Some have even said you can hear a baby crying. So, that is the ghost story that Ghost Baby reports on their website, which I find interesting. I find it interesting because no one's ever lived in this building. I won't say babies have never been there. I mean, they are in the old bowling alley and, kids bowling, all that. But the baby crying bit, I'm a little bit leery to go, that was a ghost. It could have been just about anything else. 1313 Vine Street has been a mecca for those looking for a great time out with friends for over 170 years. The atmosphere there is joyful. There we go. Buzzing with the energy of dances and social gatherings through the decades. There are surprisingly limited ghost stories about this the entirety of Union Hall. Most of them just tell of feeling watched, hearing odd sounds, and feeling uneasy. A lot of the spooky atmosphere is borrowed from the infamy, and I use this with air quotes again, of the warehouse nightclub and the society's and society recovering from the satanic panic of the 1980s, because it was that goth era, and suburbanites would clutch their pearls and go, "Oh no, someone's wearing black. They must be a Satanist," type of thing. Jen is looking surprised in the corner here. However, if you have a story about 1313 Vine Street, please share it with us. Please email stories to hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com. As always, we are dying to hear from you about your experiences. So that is 1313 Vine Street.
Seems pretty cool. I never went to the warehouse. When I moved here, I was a teenager, and then I went off to college, so I didn't even know about it. Cincinnati has never really been known for its nightclub scene.
Well, it's interesting because I always heard about it, but I didn't know that's where it was.
Yeah.
I think I remember drawing. I mean, it's hard to remember people that are listening now. Over the Rhine, I mean, obviously the Italian architecture and stuff is still there, but it was not. 3CDC has really changed the whole. I mean, they've it amazes me every time I go down there. It's changed. Like they've raised more buildings, they recovered more. Like they're totally changed all of downtown and the OTR area.
Yeah.
But back then, it was, considered somewhat dangerous to go down there. Whether it really was, it's hard to say. But, it definitely had a reputation. And perhaps that's why, you kind of had this alternative club scene here. But it was definitely considered like a cool place to go, which is why I didn't go there because I was never cool. But
Yeah, I didn't live in Cincinnati at the time when it was in business, but I remember when I moved here, people were like, "Oh, there was this place called the Warehouse," and
yes.
like, just imagine like spooky hand gestures. Like the Warehouse was a place where all the creepy goths went, and I was just like, that sounds really fun. And then learned about the race riots, and it I won't say it was a bad place to visit. I remember going to Cincinnati Music Hall for ghost investigations. I remember being approached by a man, and he was just asking for money. And I just looked at him, and I was standing in between on the street, in between, I think that's Elm Street, in between Washington Park and Music Hall, and that's all cobblestone. And I'm looking down, admiring all the cobblestone. And he comes up and he's asking for money. And I look at him and I go, "Do you know how many dead people we're standing on right now?" And he looks at me, his eyes get huge, and he just takes 3 steps back and walks away without saying a word. And that was kind of the area. It was people panhandling. I remember a lot of people smoking in what was Washington Park at the time. And some other unsavory things did happen out there, which is why it's remarkable how Washington Park is now. And then it's so different from when I moved here. And I like it because you can walk down the street. You could do it before too, as long as you were talking about how many dead people were under you. No one touched you. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, the revitalization of Cincinnati has been amazing.
It really has.
In more than one way, because I will say probably the Warehouse could be down there as an alternative place because the rent was cheaper there. And it is a huge space. And now I don't want to know what the rent is in any of those buildings. It's just skyrocketed. So that takes
It's
us
a
to
pretty
other
neat looking
topics.
building too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, continue.
Oh, I just it has the history is really interesting. One thing that in your research of this that got me interested is it seems like, and maybe this is what Reddit is now or any of those other, there were so many, I don't want to call them secret societies, but clubs and different groups. And I think that's how people would hang out back then because you couldn't find, like-minded people that easily because you didn't have the
Yeah.
internet. And so
Right.
you had like these social groups like the Elks Club or
Mhm.
the Masons. My grandfather was in the Masons and was a Shriner. And
Mhm.
a lot of these groups now simply don't get that many members.
No, my parents were very big into masonry. So
Mhm.
my dad was a 32nd degree and
Mhm.
a Scottish Rite
Mhm.
guy, and my mom was an Eastern Star.
Mhm.
And yeah, where I grew up, when it's rural, that's really important. That's a really good social networking. Really, Masons are small business owners, so they're always social networking. They're a great,
Mhm.
if somebody is sick, they're going to go help them. It's any of these social groups kind of function those in those ways where they're basically your found family. Um, and y- your best friends would be going into them. You all have like a shared cultural connecting connection with all those different German social groups and social clubs, the Odd Fellows, Shriners, all of them, and a lot of them were also philanthropic. Like I know Shriners is, so are parts of the Masonic lodges.
Mhm.
So they'll all have their favorite charities that they
Yeah, I
raise
remember
funds
my
for.
grandfather grilling hamburgers at some festival
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
child because he was also 32nd degree, and my grandma was in all the Eastern Star stuff, and
Yeah.
and I remember going to some of that stuff as a little
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. And, but yeah, you're right. In urban areas now, not so many of those clubs still exist. Excuse me, I'm hiccuping.
Were those clubs something that you had to be like, you had to be German to be in the German one, or like
Some
did
of
you have to
them,
be accepted
A
into
lot
like
of times,
apply
yeah, it's a
and
referral. Like a lot of
yeah,
times, like
okay.
I know the Masons is that way. I don't know if a lot of the clubs you have to be referred by someone
Mhm.
or have some sort of. They're like fraternities or sororities
yeah,
for adults. I
Gotcha.
mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
all of these things. And one thing that would be interesting to study is a lot of these organizations have like an exotic sort of, would you say it was the Orientalism of the 1800s and stuff, where they
Yeah.
have all these sort of fake, I don't want to say fake, but like these rituals and stuff that are
Mhm.
really,
There'd be rituals.
I hate to
Yeah.
call it made up, but having been in a sorority before, like they have, and I hate the word ritual, but it's like,
No, that's what it is. That's what
you
an
know,
anthropologist would
toast,
call a ritual.
yeah,
Brushing your
and
teeth is also considered a ritual if you do
true,
it
true,
daily
true.
at the same time. So,
It seems like a lot of organizations have these, and it's not just, I mean, if you're Catholic, if you've been confirmed or first like all of those things are rituals, and I think
mhm.
it's something that's like a bonding activity, really.
Yeah, and I was amazed at how theatrical the Masons were.
Oh,
'Cause
of
I went
course.
ironic I don't know why, so many of the Masonic halls, especially their blue lodges, are haunted. So I've
Mhm.
gone to 3 different blue lodges and done investigations, and all 3 of them super duper haunted. I'm like, "Geez, guys, what is it with this?" But
Maybe they like
going
the club so
Yeah.
much they just
They
never
wanna
that's
want to leave.
stay.
generally it, and
Yeah.
with
I
yeah.
mean, your best buddies were there, you were drinking, and I
A
mean,
lot of
what's
times your kids would go there. If you had sons, they would also be part of the lodge,
yeah.
and it's not always gender specific,
Hmm.
because a lot of times, at least the lodges where I grew up, the women would use the Blue Lodge too. It's just
Hmm.
different alternating times,
Hmm.
and you would have men and women in both of their little ritual, ceremonies
Oh,
and
totally,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and, yeah, I remember going into their costume closet because they do a lot of reenactments of things, and
Hmm.
just looking at all the costumes, I'm like, "Man, you spent a lot of money on all of these things." And just so many you think dark robes, like dark velvety robes, there are 1 or 2. The amount of aprons that get worn, not kitchen aprons, but aprons that are worn, and silly hats is amazing.
Well,
Um,
it's all community building, really. I
yeah,
mean, and wanting it to feel like it's beyond just
yeah,
normal, I guess. You want to,
yeah.
and I think that that type of thing has just lessened in popularity as the internet, because now with the internet, you can easily find people, as artists. We have many online groups where we can talk about what we do and our art with like minded people. You didn't have
Mhm.
that back then.
Yeah.
Right.
You're pretty much
Well,
stuck with your town.
Well, yeah. But you had so many different groups, and they all
Yes.
advertised in the newspaper. There would be pages dedicated to the meet times and locations of every one of these places and groups. And like the art club of Cincinnati is a similar like
Exactly. Yeah.
social club. And then even today we still have them. We have like the Japan America Society has social clubs, and
Hmm.
um, well, we
The
still have the
Bourbon
illustrators
Society.
group.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Bourbon Society.
the
There's all
Bourbon
sorts of different.
Society. They still exist, and
Hmm.
COVID put a big old kink in a lot of them, but they still are around. So,
I used to be part of Drinking Liberally. We
yep.
used to meet and drink, but it seems like a lot of the formality
Oh yeah,
of these groups has sort of dropped away, and they're more casual in their
yeah.
structure. I remember there was I went to a women's art club meeting because I spoke to the women's art club. I'm actually going to speak to them again in April. And I was one thing that was impressive to me was they still had a parliamentary procedure meeting with minutes and each of the people reading, their reports and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. You never see this anymore.
Yeah.
But there are clubs that still do it. And that used to be like when I was in Girl Scouts, they did parliamentary procedure where you had the president read their thing and then the vice president and then the secretary and stuff. But, people just aren't into that anymore, I
Yeah,
guess, as
yeah.
much.
No, it is a lot more casual. You can just write that all down
Hmm.
in the minutes and just reference those back. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
I have wanted to start a book club where we meet once a month, but we don't all read the same book. We read whatever we want, and then
Mhm.
we tell everybody about it.
Ah, that'd be fun.
That would be fun.
It's as far as I've ever gotten.
Well, we could
I
always do the Hometown Haunts book club.
yeah.
That
We
would
could
be
go meet at the Tome. They would love
yeah.
Yes,
us.
what a great idea.
Yeah.
I
I
want to
mean,
go to
there's
Ghost
certain.
Baby.
Hmm?
We should go to Ghost Baby.
I think it'd be a little bit loud for us to be able to go. And the fun note, Christina, is these tunnels, if you remember Jay for Mest,
Hmm.
he had that big art display that was in a tunnel.
Yes, that
That
was
was
cool.
these tunnels.
Oh,
Yep, back in
interesting.
2018. So before
Wow.
Ghost Baby was finished, that's where Jay had his art exhibit. So really
Hmm.
cool. It was. I'm sad I missed it, but couldn't go.
Hmm.
Should
It
we
was
start
impressive.
a goth club?
Hmm?
We should start a goth club.
Well,
Don't you
Wednesday was super popular.
I think,
Well,
people would be
only
into
only
it.
one. Are we goths? Would we? I mean, who considers themselves a goth here?
I always wanted to be one, but I
Oh,
was
okay,
never
so
brave enough
aspiring.
to be one.
I mean, I think that I'm not dark enough to be a goth. I think is my problem.
I was. I
You,
am.
you
I
so
it
so we
never
have
goes away.
so Kat is our sole goth,
Yeah, I'm the sole
and
goth.
so
I'm not
we're
dressed that way today,
like, what
Yeah.
should we
but
call ourselves? I mean, the only reason why I wear a lot of black is not for goth reasons, but because I get paint on and stuff on everything, and white and lighter colored things just get ruined so quickly that
yeah.
Yeah.
you
No,
know.
I get that. It's I wear black because that's my favorite color,
Hmm.
and yeah, oh, I'm not
It
gonna
does
go.
coordinate with everything.
It does. It
It
looks
does.
really good with ginger hair too. It's one of the
Hmm.
few
Hmm.
colors that ever works all the time. It also makes getting dressed super easy. So
Hmm. The
I
only
just
problem
haven't.
is when you have two orange cats, there is a fur thing.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
Oh, speaking
the
of animals,
ghost.
With a
hi there, Chewy.
tail.
Aw.
Hi there, Chewy. It's everyone's favorite Chewbacca.
Aw, he's so
Maybe.
cute.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but I mean, I think a book club would be really fun.
yeah,
That
that
would be
would
See what
be.
fun.
people are reading, and I mean, the thing about reading your own thing though is, I guess that requires everybody in the club to kind of almost do a book report.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I'm like, it'd be a
Well,
monthly book report, but it's really a
loosely.
summary.
Loosely. I
I mean,
mean, really, the point is to commit to reading a book a month, right?
mhm,
And then get together with your friends and eat and drink and talk
I
shit.
think we
I
could
mean,
agree with on a book though.
we could.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm going to be honest. I listen to most stuff on Audible, so
That counts
Well,
as
you
a
could
book.
still like You can still participate by just listening.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't
Although
have
it's
to.
interesting, I've had friends in book clubs that say the people that listen on Audible often take a lot of stuff very differently than the people that read it.
Hmm.
I've tried listening to audiobooks, and I find having someone read it to me who isn't the author,
Mhm.
it depends on their inflection, their tone, how they read it,
It
and
really
Mhm.
how you
does.
take it. And when you're reading it yourself, you're reading it in your own voice
Mhm.
Mhm.
and how you would speak or how you would just hear things, and it's very different. So I have a hard time with, well, maybe not with books anyway, not so much podcasts because it's not
Mhm.
like
Having a
formally
good
written.
reader really is important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There are books that I have not liked before because I didn't like the reading of them,
Yeah.
Right.
and sometimes a book that's maybe not as good you might like better because the reader's better.
Right.
Mhm.
It is a different experience. Troy and I were arguing about this the other day, and maybe our listeners can weigh in on this, whether you're really reading a book or not when you listen to it.
Ah. Hmm.
If you technically no, it's not reading, but
Yes.
you're listening.
I think you're
Yes.
So
still
it's
taking
the
in the
same
content, so I'd
thing.
still
Mhm.
count it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What I
It
do
just
love about e-readers now is I love having books, like the physical feeling of books,
Mhm.
but being dyslexic, the serifed fonts that they usually use, I can't read very well. It
Oh,
hurts.
interesting.
Oh,
So
really?
now with a lot of e-readers, you can get a dyslexic friendly font and download that. And oh
Wow.
my goodness, it speeds up how fast I can read now.
That's
Oh, wow,
amazing.
that's cool.
Yeah. So if you are dyslexic like me, fair listener, and like reading books, but they give you migraines and put you to sleep, um, try downloading a dyslexic friendly font. There's a few different ones that you can get now. And it doubles the amount of reading that I can do.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so
It
this
I
it,
is
it
didn't
a
know
nice
that
hot tip.
about Dixlex. I didn't know that the
Yeah.
font
Yeah, because
mattered.
like I'll confuse B's and D's and P's all
Okay.
the time.
Mhm.
And by the way, I have all three of my dogs are just sitting around me,
Aw.
like a little circle of fur. Anyhow, so you'll hear jingles of tags. Yeah, I confuse them all the time, and also L's and I's if
Mhm.
they're not formatted right. Like a
Mhm.
serif helps. Those are those little checks that you see
Uh-huh.
on any of the texts and fonts that you use, and that does help. It helps me indicate which letter it is, but yeah, but if I'm reading Korean or Japanese, I do not have this problem. It's only in
Oh,
English.
interesting.
So
Oh,
it's just a
wow.
fantastic little just how is this working? I'm sure there is a linguist out there who would be like, "Oh yeah, I want to talk to you." But
Yeah.
That's really
That's
interesting. I
yeah,
wonder why that is.
I don't know.
just how your
And
brain's wired, I guess.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, but just that was just my tip for if we're doing a book club
Mhm.
Mhm.
for anyone who's dyslexic, there's hope. You can still read and enjoy books. It's just
Mhm.
you'll need some extra stuff.
Basically, I need a reason to read my books because I have so many that I haven't read that I need to stop getting them, but
Yeah.
I can't. I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to. The thing that's nice is it's a thing to discuss. I
Mhm.
have a couple friends that have book clubs, and we for a while had a drinking liberally one too. We didn't really
Mhm.
read political literature. We read more novels and biographies and stuff. But
I'm just going to read about dead things. So
Right.
every
Well,
single time I'd be like, this is the ghost book that I read today or
uh-huh.
this month.
mhm.
Or we could have a theme every month where it's not necessarily the same book, but within the same genre. Or is
That
that too
that
wide?
could work. I just
Mhm.
want to read about dead things. So
Well,
that's what motivates me to read.
maybe dead things.
I
The
need to
book
learn about
club.
the
Now,
dead
Just read
do
all
you
about
ever
dead
read
things.
do you ever read fiction, or is fiction on your radar,
I
or
don't. So I very rarely ever read fiction,
Mhm.
and it is always just historical books, and usually somebody's died and something haunts that area. It's
Mhm.
that is my niche. I live in it, and
Mhm.
that's what got me reading when I was 8. And I've never really stopped since. It's not that I don't like to. Like I love Howl's Moving Castle by
Mhm.
Diane Wynne Jones.
She's a great writer.
Yeah. And like I love stuff by Neil Gaiman, but I have to
Mhm.
listen to them via audiobooks while I'm working.
Mhm.
So, but if I'm going to sit down and actually read a book, it usually is going to be a haunted history book.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
can't. I've tried reading Anne Rice stuff, and I'm like, I love you, Anne. I can't read this. So
I
Mhm.
love her.
I guess I need to give back my goth card and give it to you, Jen.
Mhm.
So
I read all the
Outwardly, I was not a goth. Internally, I'm a
your
goth.
soul is
but
as
that's more
black as
important.
the sky.
But that's the most important thing. Are you inside a goth?
I think so.
Whether
Am I
you're
inside a goth? How have I disemboweled them?
exactly when you think that way, then obviously you may be a goth if you think
You-
That's funny.
oh my
that's your
goodness.
cartoon this week, Kat. You may be a goth if.
Yeah. I you may be a goth. That brings me to like you do the crone cartoons,
Yes.
Christina. I was thinking about doing a series called The Creeps, which it would
Oh
just
yeah.
be a slice of life with my family
Mhm.
in the vein of the original Addams Family cartoons.
Oh, you
Um
should do it
because
totally.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm a living goth. Like the Addams Family to him, he was very much Adams was very much a goth before that was a thing.
Mhm.
And so he just took all of his interests and put them on paper for the New Yorker.
Mhm. Kind
And
of like Edward Gorey.
yes, very much. And for a really long time, I thought Edward Gorey did the Adams Family because I was dumb. And but no, these were two men with the same interests making
Mhm.
illustrations. Um, though I would say Gorey, I think, did it slightly better. But anyhow, it's a
Well, he
different debate.
apparently like all those men he drew, that's how he dressed, the big fur coats and
Hmm.
like he lived in a giant Victorian home and
Yep.
Oh,
he
wow.
lived with a bunch of cats.
Yep.
I mean, he
Aw.
was an interesting guy. I
Yeah.
have a book on he didn't have like a autobiography, but there's like a collection of his interviews that I have that's
Yeah.
interesting with him.
Well, I just thought it would be funny writing
Mhm.
a slice of life story or comic about a very gothy mother trying to
Mm.
navigate being a parent in the 21st century.
So it
I
is
don't make very many
autobiographical. Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is very autobiographical then.
It would be very autobiographical, but it's just like I think I told you about Wheatley's headless horseman costume from when he was a puppy. I know
No,
I've told the
I don't
story.
know if I've heard
Jen
this.
I
is
think so.
laughing.
I think so.
Yeah.
I have the image in my head.
Okay.
I may not
So
remember it.
it's okay. I will retell it. This will be the Cliff Notes version. So back in 2011, we adopted Wheatley, who for our listeners was my very first dog, and he was super fluffy and black and white, partied, fuzzy dog. And I got him a very cartoony looking headless horseman costume. So it was a little rider that was the headless horseman. Um, and it was sitting astride Wheatley as if he was the horse, and then it was holding the pumpkin as its head. And I thought this was the greatest costume. It is so Halloween. And I entered him into a costume contest for dogs and cats if they chose to show up. And then there was also a little kids costume contest. And this was in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Cincinnati. I really should have known my audience. So it was not gory. It wasn't spouting blood or anything. It was just extremely. It was a soft stuffed animal, decapitated human, basically. So so we do it, and Wheatley did not win. There was somebody who was dressed up as a spider that was like a little wiener dog that the hound. There we go. And it was really cute, so it deserved a win. But this mother came up to me and she's like, "Excuse me." And I'm like, "Yes." And she goes, "Your costume for your dog is too scary and inappropriate for this costume contest." And she said,
Whoa.
"My little girl is too afraid of your dog's costume." And I looked down. Mind you, Wheatley is maybe 15 pounds. He looks like a gigantic fluff ball because his hair has been teased out to 3 inches. So imagine this black and white little cloud with this very cartoony decapitated human sitting on it holding a pumpkin. And I got it at PetSmart. It was not like handcrafted or anything. And I just looked at her and I'm like, it's the Headless Horseman. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, a classic American folk tale. And she's
Yeah.
just like, but it's
That
too
all children know.
all children. I'm like, Disney animated it. And she's
Yeah.
just like, yes, but it's too scary. And I'm like,
Tough
get
shit.
a life. And walked away.
It sounds like it wasn't you, it was her. I mean,
Yeah.
people
Totally
that-
her. We still have a hometown haunt to read. So
Yeah.
Yes, we still have a hometown haunt. We digress. Well, I mean, I think that this kind of, because we started talking about goths and books,
yeah,
and you
It
know,
just- we went
the
into the art.
warehouse just brings that out in people.
it
Yeah.
really
I
does.
remember you used to see like ads in I think it was City Beat and stuff like
Yep.
that for warehouse. But
I
like
have
I
a few
remember
of
the
them.
people that used to go there like in college and stuff. And it, you know, even though I was in DAP at the time, that was not the crowd that I was. Indie music crowd and the show tune crowd obviously don't usually hang out together. You know, my enjoyment of Andrew Lloyd Webber seemed not appreciated by people that like the Clash. I don't understand why.
God. So you want to look into my youth? I used to dress straight for when I was leaving the house in college, because I went to college while living with my parents. And as soon as I got to the college, I would change into my more gothy or punk outfits. And I was a part of the Post, which was an underground rock scene in
Nice.
northern Indiana. And I took Mike there once and he looked terrified. He was just like, I don't what? I'm like, no one's going to hurt you. Like you'll leave with both your kidneys. It's okay. But he was just absolutely just the eyes were the size of saucer plates. Like
Yeah.
just at
You made
everything.
me cough.
Yeah, sorry. So, but anyway,
There definitely is still a crowd that's into that, and maybe
Oh,
they
yeah.
need to have more goth clubs. Are there any goth clubs? Are there goth clubs in Cincinnati that we just don't know
I don't
about?
think so. No,
I don't think so.
It's just not been. No, that particular decade is gone. Like in Chicago, there was the Castle, which was a big goth club that's also said to be haunted. And yeah, just I if there are any, they're super underground right now, and I am not in that group anymore to be able to tell you. So
I was never in that kind of group. Nope.
Yeah.
So is there, you know, that's a good question, you know, talking about things like the warehouse, that kind of, and the, you know, talking about cults, because we were just talking about doing a show on cults, like in the 70s and 80s, the whole rock and roll scene, like there was this satanic panic around it.
yes,
And I'm wondering if there is any music now that has the same. Where is
Oh.
the satanic panic seems to have moved to politics away from music.
it has gotten into politics, but
I had an older male coworker tell me that rock and roll is the devil's music.
And you
and
said,
it's
yeah, that's
Satan.
why I like it.
It's Satan worshiping.
oh bless him.
You know, I had a class.
Okay,
in
dude.
I had a class in high school, and the teacher with a serious face was talking about all the hidden artwork in album covers and stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry.
And sorry, I had to edit my.
It's
I might have
okay.
to do
No,
it again.
I'm just sitting here laughing, and I'm like, magical mystery tour, anyone? Like, or no, it's well, that one,
And it's what we call Easter
Sergeant
eggs
Pepper.
today.
Oh yeah,
Sorry?
I mean, I had
Easter.
friends.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends in high school whose older brothers and sisters had their albums taken away and burned, and because they thought they were satanic. And
Wow.
you know, there was a lot of music, and then of course, then it went to D&D, which was really funny because
Oh my goodness.
Fantasy devil worshiping cult sacrificing people in the basement.
I'm clearly doing too much talking that my voice is not ready for.
Would you like me to read the hometown haunt then?
Yes, I think that
All
you should
right.
read it. Well,
We are
by
going
my
to-
vocal cords.
Yeah. All right. So our hometown haunt is from Brad. And Brad writes, around 2011, we got a picture on a game camera of a small child wearing old-time overalls at a remote cabin on a day we were there. Never saw the kid, and no little kids within walking distance. Occasionally, the smell of cherry tobacco or laundry soap. Again, no near neighbors. And then this continues. I just smelled the cherry tobacco last month. We also saw a kerosene type lantern moving down our driveway one night. Couldn't get the kids to investigate. Smiley face. P.S. Near Zaleski, Ohio, Vinton County, home of the haunted Moonville train tunnel. So, yes, I liked your jazz hands there, Jen. Yeah, thank you, Brad, for submitting this. That is a wonderfully. Well, I love that. This is a nice little spooky tale. I like the idea of a spooky child in
Mhm.
overalls just
So
haunting
I'm guessing he
outside.
didn't go down the drive
No,
to
no.
I
investigate
guess
either.
neither one of them, the kids
Well, our
nor
ghost
Brad.
lights, we've done shows on them. That is a
Mhm.
pretty common thing.
Yeah, yeah.
My first reaction to that would be like, who was coming down my driveway? I'm not going out there because they're probably going to murder me.
Yeah, I would be. I don't think murderers would exactly be using a light that's so obvious going down
That's
the
just where
hill.
my brain goes, cat.
I would just be like, send out the dogs and see what happens. If the dogs run back, then you're like, oh no.
Uh-huh.
But no, that would be fascinating. I would probably
Yeah.
just sit in the lawn and watch it fly around.
Mhm.
Have
Be
you
like,
se- you've
do a
seen them
barrel
before?
roll, do a
You've seen
barrel roll.
you've seen ghost lights before, right?
I have. I did not scream do a barrel roll at them though. That I missed opportunity. Yeah, I've seen them on the occasion that immediately pops up is I was investigating an old funeral home. So, oh yeah, and a different one was a historical society.
Oh
Hmm.
wow.
They were self-illuminating orbs floating and then also wow, more than one and then also Sedamsville Rectory. They were just floating down the hallways like they were a
Wow.
little ball of light that were self-illuminating and super duper creepy because you're like, my brain, I know physics is a thing. I think this breaks all the rules type of. I was just in
Yeah.
awe over it. So, and they've always glowed white. I've
Hmm.
never seen them in any other colors, but I
So
like this
orbs you
story.
can
Thank you, Brad.
physically see,
Sorry?
right? Orbs you can physically see.
Yeah, yeah.
And
As
if they
It,
opposed to
show up
like
on
on
your
your camera. Yeah.
it's just dust when you take a picture of them, or when they just you
I
don't
think
see it when
orbs
you're
can.
taking.
Yeah, there's a few photos that are ghost photos that I sit there and I go, that could be an orb that looks a
Mhm.
lot like one. Um,
But most of the time it's
Most
dust.
of the time it's dust
Okay.
or hair or
Mm.
bugs.
Mhm.
Um, sorry, I'm just imagining the mayflies that will just swarm you in parts of the Midwest if you take a photo. You're just like, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, most of the time it's dust. And I remember before I realized that orbs were dust, I took a photo of a friend and there was dozens of orbs around them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you're super haunted. No, we just
Dust.
needed to get a bottle of Pledge and dust more
For some
often.
reason I'm picturing Pigpen from Peanuts right now.
You're not too far off.
Yeah.
He was haunted. That's really what it was.
Yes, it's just a haunting.
Yeah, he was
Dark
haunted.
It's a
cloud.
light
He was
oppression, light
yeah.
spirit oppression. Wow, Charles Schultz, you were really a cult, weren't you? Maybe Peanuts will be banned next.
You never know. I wouldn't put anything past anyone.
Yeah,
If I don't know what.
they have that Halloween episode.
That's
Great
true.
pumpkin.
That's true. The Great Pumpkin was pretty, edgy.
The
Yeah.
smallest cult put to screen.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just Linus.
Well, on that
Sorry.
note, before all of our voices run
Oh
out.
wow, yeah, it's been a special day. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Brad, for writing in, as well as Eric. If you would like to share your stories of the strange and spooky, to steal James Willis's term right there, you can email them to hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com. You can also follow us at Sin Cabinet Curio on Twitter and at Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities on Instagram. And Cincy is spelled Cincy, Cabinet of Curiosities, just for those who want to know how we spell it. So, for myself, Christina, and Jen, thank you for joining us. Have a great week. Stay safe and stay spooky. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.